I was hit by a car and injured my head. The doctor said I might develop amnesia. Jokingly, I asked my boyfriend who was staying by my bedside, "Who are you?" He paused for a moment and said that we were just ordinary friends. Chapter 1. I looked at Lissandro, who was sitting by my bedside and had just said the words ordinary friends. His expression was cold and distant. Not like he was joking at all. The words got you, didn't I? Got stuck in my throat, and I could only stare at him silently. I figured that if the doctor hadn't called him, he probably wouldn't have shown up at the hospital at all. But I didn't question him. I paused for a moment, then forced a casual smile. "Is that so? Then I've really troubled you." He gave a cold as if I were wasting his time. He lowered his head, lit up his phone, glanced at the screen, and said, "Since you're awake, I'll get going. There's work at the company." Before I could respond, he stood up, ready to leave. When he reached the door and pulled it open, perhaps because of a tiny trace of conscience left in him, he turned back and said, "Get some good rest." The smile on my face didn't fall until after he left and closed the door. Then it disappeared completely, leaving me expressionless. No one knows that Lissandro and I are in a relationship. Ours started as a campus romance. After graduation, we moved to the big city together and got jobs as marketing planners at the top company in City A. Back then, we were young, but we knew office romances weren't ideal, so we tacitly agreed not to tell anyone. 4 years later, we were both promoted to business managers, each leading a department, competing against each other. At that point, it was even more impossible to make our relationship public, so we've kept it secret all the way until now. I once hesitated and asked him if we should go public. After all, the company didn't explicitly forbid relationships, but every time, he brushed me off absent-mindedly. I don't even know anymore whether we still count as a couple. But today, I finally got my answer. The doctor told Lissandro that I might experience temporary memory loss, but also said not to worry, I would recover soon. Even with such obvious inconsistencies, he still told me we were just ordinary friends. I guess he wasn't afraid of me remembering and confronting him later. He didn't care at all whether I had really lost my memory, or whether I was joking with him. He had probably wanted to break up for a long time. Makes sense, if he didn't break up. How could he openly pursue Lola? Chapter 2. A woman's sixth sense is often sharper than radar. Truth be told, even before this, my relationship with Lissandro had already grown dull. We'd been together for too long, from sophomore year in college until now, 7 years in total. We knew each other as well as we knew the lines on our own palms, so any change in him was impossible to hide from me. The signs probably started when a new intern joined his department. She was quite pretty, fresh-faced, and went by the name Lola Lee. Her last name was Lee. The HR who managed employee records once gossiped to me that in the father section of her onboarding file, she had written Isaac Lee, the owner of our company, a rich, beautiful heiress, working right in his department. At first, Lissandro explained his attentiveness to Lola like this: "It's not good to offend her, and she's just a childish little girl. Not even my type. You're overthinking it." I didn't point out that this childish little girl was actually 2 years older than me, but I silently accepted his explanation. Later, I couldn't tell whether he simply didn't take me seriously anymore, or if he never intended to hide anything from me at all. Within half a month of Lola joining, one day I logged into his long-unused music account to look for some background music. I discovered that he and Lola had followed each other, despite the fact that, over the past 2 years, he had barely listened to music due to work. This account dated back to our college days. Back then, we used it together, accumulating a total of 13,896 hours of listening time. He had even created a playlist named after me, filled with love songs that reminded him of me. Songs by artists I liked. Songs I had shared on my social feed. Songs he listened to when he missed me during long-distance holidays. I checked, and he had deleted that playlist. In his recent listening history were Korean trendy songs that Lola liked, the kind he would never have been interested in before. We worked in marketing planning, so I told myself he was just trying to stay in touch with younger trends. Maybe I was overthinking it, so I kept quiet, logging out of his account without a word. I'm the kind of person who won't make a scene without solid evidence. After all, the one who lasts the longest at the table is always the one who speaks the least and shows the least emotion. Of course, The tacit understanding and coincidences between him and Lola didn't stop there. In early February, he took on a project with his team. At the time, I was out of town leading my own team on another project. I only heard in passing that the client he was dealing with was a difficult British man. After a full day of work, I hadn't even had time to eat. I called him first to ask about his project progress, but he didn't pick up, probably busy. After thinking for a moment, I sent him a message on WeChat. He didn't reply. Later, I saw him post a group photo of his team on his social feed. Lola stood beside him, flashing a peace sign with a bright smile. The project seemed to be going smoothly. His caption read, "Know your enemy and know yourself." Lola posted the same photo with the caption, "And you'll never lose a battle." I clicked into their profiles and saw that even their status messages had been changed to match these lines, as if echoing each other, like a private understanding only the two of them shared during that project. I don't know if, at the moment he changed our shared status message, he thought of me at all. Probably not, because he never returned my call, never replied to my message, but he did leave a comment under Lola's post. "Hurry and eat. Take care of your stomach." At the time, I touched my own empty, faintly aching stomach and turned off my phone. This was the second thing I endured from him. Chapter 3. I was discharged 3 days later. After observation, the doctor confirmed there were no serious issues and let me leave. That day, I didn't receive a single message from Lissandro, but a bouquet did arrive. It was cappuccino roses, my favorite. Holding that bouquet, I decided to give Lissandro one more chance. I sat in the hospital corridor and called him. It took a long time before the call finally connected. In a gentle tone, I asked, "Lissandro, I'm being discharged today. Do you have time to come pick me up?" We both tacitly avoided mentioning the amnesia and ordinary friends incident, as if it had never happened. He didn't speak at first. After a moment, he said, "Sorry, Diana. I'm really busy and can't get away. I can call you a car?" "What are you busy with?" I asked calmly. There was a pause on the other end, probably surprised. I had always been considerate and rarely pressed him so directly, because I knew both our projects had just wrapped up. This was supposed to be our most relaxed period. Yet he said he was busy. He didn't answer. I sighed and hung up the phone myself. A man's love, or lack of it, is always obvious. I remembered when we had just graduated and started working. One night at 3 in the morning, I suddenly had acute gastroenteritis. Before losing consciousness, I managed to call him. When I woke up, I found him sitting by my bedside with red eyes. One foot was wearing a slipper, the other a sneaker, and both shoes were for the left foot. I couldn't help but laugh weakly, but he looked shaken, his eyes reddening instantly. "You're still laughing?" The moment I opened the door and saw you lying on the floor, my heart nearly stopped. In situations like this, you should call emergency services first. What if I didn't pick up your call? That would have been so dangerous. At the time, I smiled at him, full of dependence and trust. But in my heart, "You're the safest person. See?" So there really was a time when he cared about me like that. There really was a time when our love was this genuine and beautiful, even though now it's almost unrecognizable. When I think back on those distant memories, a faint, self-mocking smile still tugs at my lips. I shook my head and threw the cappuccino roses in my hand into the nearby trash can. "Don't like the flowers?" someone asked from behind. I turned around. It was a man I didn't recognize. He pointed at the flowers in the trash and apologized. "I'm sorry. Yesterday, my driver accidentally hit you. I took you to the hospital and contacted your emergency contact, but I had to leave due to urgent matters. These are for your discharge. I've already paid your hospital bill as well. I'm really sorry. If you need anything else, you can tell me directly." I let out a quiet, incredulous laugh. So even this bouquet had been sent by a stranger. I looked up and replied politely, "I'm sorry. I thought they were from someone else." I sighed inwardly. I've always been a reasonable and composed person, but having good manners doesn't mean I'm weak or easy to take advantage of. As for Lissandro and me, we're truly at the end. Chapter 4. When I returned home from the hospital, Lissandro was already there. When I opened the door and walked in, he was sitting on the couch. The TV was on, playing a variety show he wasn't even interested in. He held his phone in his hand, head lowered, probably chatting with someone. a faint smile lingering on his lips. The soft glow from the screen lit up his face, giving him an unexpected gentleness. I couldn't even remember the last time I had seen such a gentle smile on his face. I paused by the door. He was so absorbed that he didn't even hear me come in, until I softly called his name. Lissandro. He instantly wiped the smile off his face and looked up. My gaze fell on his hands. Almost instinctively, he locked his phone screen and placed it face down on the couch. Looking at me with surprise, he asked, "You're discharged?" Only then did I truly smile at him and at myself. I looked at him calmly, my tone distant and indifferent. "Let's talk." My breakup with Lissandro could be considered peaceful. We were both very rational people, and the whole process didn't take long. We were mature adults who valued dignity. Everything was laid out plainly. There really wasn't much to discuss. It was all understood without being said. After I said, "Let's break up," he didn't ask why. He just fell silent. I think, in that moment, he probably felt relieved. After a while, he finally said, "I'm sorry." I didn't accept his apology. I simply and calmly arranged what would happen after the breakup. My tone was steady, my expression not particularly sad. This seemed to surprise him. After I asked him to move out as soon as possible, he suddenly interrupted me and asked, "Diana, you don't seem sad at all." He frowned slightly, his gaze fixed on my face, studying me with confusion. Men can be so ridiculous. Even if he no longer loved me, even if this breakup was exactly what he had wanted, seeing me this calm and composed still made him uneasy. Perhaps in his mind, I should have been crying, begging him to stay. Only then would he feel a sense of satisfaction beneath his annoyance. I looked up at him, emotionless. I didn't tell him that I had already gone through my sadness. When he didn't reply to my messages but commented under Lola's newly posted update. When he deleted the playlist he had made for me just to listen to the Korean trendy songs Lola liked. When he told the amnesiac me that we were just ordinary friends. When, in places I couldn't see, he and Lola were immersed in that push and pull, ambiguous tension of adults. I had already been sad. To me, he was like a benign tumor growing inside my body, there, not fatal yet, but if left unchecked, it would slowly worsen, gradually eroding my health and vitality. There's nothing to fear as long as it's still benign. I just need to cut it out completely. The pain is only temporary, but in the end, I will heal. Before Lissandro finished packing and left, I calmly asked him one last question. "Lissandro, the reason you changed, was it because Lola is Isaac's daughter, or simply because she is who she is?" He stood by the doorway and looked back at me, tall and straight, just like when I first met him in college. His handsome face had lost its youthful awkwardness, replaced by a quiet, composed maturity. I had always thought he was still that shy boy who once stood in front of me on the playground, blushing as he awkwardly confessed his feelings. But only at this moment did I realize that, at some point, he had already become an adult who weighs gains and losses in the deep sea of interest. He paused before answering. "Diana, people always want to move upward." That single sentence made me laugh softly in disbelief, but I respected that bit of honesty. I looked at him and smiled sincerely. "Lissandro, then I wish you great success. May you soar high and achieve everything you desire." His gaze rested on my face. Deep in his eyes, there was a faint trace of regret, but compared to his burning ambition, it was probably insignificant. In the end, he sighed and said, "Diana, don't hate me." I didn't respond. Chapter 5. One of the downsides of an office romance is that after breaking up, there's no way to gracefully disappear from each other's lives. No matter what, people still have to go to work. When the taxi stopped in front of the company building, I saw Lissandro and Lola. Not just the two of them, there were also other members of their team. It was lunchtime. They were probably heading out to eat together. Lola was lively, wearing a bright, charming smile, with her back to the road and facing Lissandro. She gestured animatedly, talking about something I couldn't hear. Lissandro had a faint smile on his lips, his gaze gentle as he looked at her. Every now and then, he would watch the crowd behind her, pulling her aside by the arm whenever she was about to bump into someone. It felt both familiar and unfamiliar. After our breakup, he looked happy. I stayed in the car until their figures disappeared into the Hong Kong-style cafe downstairs before finally looking away. The driver in front glanced at me curiously and asked, "Do you have a crush on that tall, handsome guy?" I smiled and explained, "That's my ex-boyfriend." The driver's expression immediately shifted from curiosity to awkwardness, as if he wanted to comfort me but didn't know how. I thoughtfully added, "It's okay, it didn't really affect me." After entering the company, Bella greeted me with delight. "Diana, you're discharged? Honestly, you didn't even let us visit you." I smiled as I walked. It wasn't serious. Besides, I'm fine now. How's the post-project review for the Hong Kong case going? She followed me into my office with a stack of printed documents and handed them to me. Glancing outside, there weren't many people around. She leaned in closer and whispered, "Diana, don't look at the data yet. There's something I want to tell you." I put down what I was holding and looked at her. For some reason, her expression carried a hint of indignation as she said, "Diana, you know Albert is going to take over the South City branch next month, right? Everyone's been saying that once he leaves, the open director position will probably come down to you and Lissandro. Over the years, your performances have been evenly matched. I'm not trying to gossip, but based on merit alone, whether it's you or Lissandro, we'd all accept it. But, at this point, she hesitated, biting her lower lip, clearly struggling to say it. I smiled gently. "It's okay, it's just the two of us. Go ahead." She paused, then finally lowered her voice. "A few days ago, in the break room, I saw Lissandro hugging that Lola from his department. The rumor that Lola might be the boss Isaac's daughter wasn't exactly a secret in our company, which was probably why Bella seemed so upset. She likely felt Lissandro had an unfair advantage." I absent-mindedly curled the edge of the document in my hand, suddenly wanting to laugh. So while I had been lying in the hospital, staring at my phone and wondering what Lissandro was doing when he went silent, he had been wrapped in someone else's warmth. But this was also within expectations. I let out a self-deprecating laugh and tried to comfort Bella. "It's okay. Personnel appointments and transfers are arranged by higher-ups. Just do what you're supposed to in your position and go with the flow." Bella sighed, and I lowered my head to continue reviewing the data. When Lissandro came over and knocked on the glass door of my office, I was quite surprised. In my view, although our breakup had been smooth and without any ugly fallout, that only meant I was a decent person. It didn't mean Lissandro and I could still chat casually and pretend to be normal colleagues as if nothing had happened, unless absolutely necessary. I thought neither of us would want any private communication with the other anymore. Not until I understood why he had come. He stood in front of my desk, tall and composed, his gaze quietly resting on me. After a brief pause, he said, "Diana, I thought you would resign." His tone sounded like advice, yet also like a warning. "Diana, we were together for 7 years. Don't say I'm heartless. Albert is going to South City next month, and one of us will be promoted to director to take his place. If I were you, I'd start making plans early and find myself a way out." I looked at him and understood what he meant. He was certain that he would get that position and was advising me to resign. Otherwise, once he became director, and with the boss's daughter being his girlfriend, to avoid gossip, he would probably force me to resign on my own. This so-called precaution was his kind advice, urging me to find another path as soon as possible. I could accept a man changing his feelings and falling for someone else. After all, love is never worth putting to the test. But I hadn't expected him to lose even the last bit of humanity. I looked at him as if he were a stranger, and under his gaze, I said my first curse, "Lissandro, you're such trash." He accepted it in silence. Chapter 6. My first direct confrontation with Lola happened a week after my talk with Lissandro. After breaking up with me, using office relationships aren't appropriate as his excuse for staying secret all those years, Lissandro openly got together with Lola. I saw their public displays of affection on social media. Countless colleagues from the company left their blessings in the comments. Only a few mutual friends from our university days messaged me privately on WeChat, asking in shock what had happened. I didn't reply to a single one. The day Lola appeared in front of me was an ordinary afternoon. Most people in the office were either out for lunch or resting at their desks. I was alone in the break room, grinding coffee beans. As the rich aroma slowly filled the air, Lola appeared behind me. I stepped slightly aside to let her pass, but she didn't move forward. Instead, she stood in front of me, her gaze lingering on me with a hint of something unreadable, and abruptly said, "I know you and Lissandro used to date." She had a baby face and was shorter than me. I looked down at her calmly, raising an eyebrow in mild confusion. She looked up at me, her eyes scanning my face inch by inch. When she didn't get the reaction she wanted, disappointment flickered across her expression. After a pause, she continued, "I saw that playlist he named after you, and honestly, your so-called secret relationship wasn't that well hidden." I remained silent, patiently waiting for her to finish. She went on, My father really likes Lissandro. You know, he's young and accomplished, mature, steady, ambitious, driven. My father says Lissandro reminds him of his younger self. My father wants to mentor him. Lissandro's future is limitless, and it just so happens that I like him too, and he likes me. Now we're together. But Diana, your presence is an eyesore. I hope you'll have the sense to resign on your own. Only then did I understand her purpose, first to provoke, then to warn, and finally to kindly persuade me to step aside. Holding my cup, I remained composed, my tone calm, even carrying a faint smile as I looked down at her. "Miss Lee, any personnel changes in this company require proper procedures. I'm not sure what exactly you intend by coming to me with this speech today. Are you trying to fire me? Or something else? If you intend to terminate my position, company policy clearly states that HR must handle it and inform me of the reason." Her expression shifted between pale and flushed, likely not expecting me to be so unmoved. Before turning to leave, I glanced at her and added, "Oh, and for employees at manager level and above, any personnel changes require direct approval from the chairman. In other words, in this entire company, only the chairman has the authority to dismiss me. Miss, you're just an intern in Lissandro's department. You're reaching a bit too far." With that, I didn't bother looking at her reaction. I walked out, coffee cup in hand. Not long after that conversation, the official notice of Albert's transfer to South City was announced. Before his departure, the chairman arranged a farewell banquet. All management-level staff in the company were required to attend. Everyone knew that aside from seeing Albert off, there would also be personnel changes in the company's core departments. When the HR manager placed the invitation on my desk, Bella was the only one who looked visibly uneasy. She was someone I had personally mentored. Leaning over her desk, she first cheered me on, then said seriously, "Diana, no matter what happens, our whole team is behind you. If things don't work out here, we'll follow you wherever you go." I laughed, lightly tapping her forehead with the invitation. My tone was gentle. "What are you talking about? It's just a dinner. Did you forget my life motto? When faced with water, build a bridge. When faced with mountains, carve a road. What's there to fear? Besides, the one who loses will definitely not be me." Chapter 7. That day at the dinner, my emotions were steady. In the private dining room, the heads of the marketing department, administration, HR, finance, and various business lines all gathered together. The chairman, Isaac, sat at the head of the table. Lola sat to his left, and Lissandro sat beside Lola. The moment everyone saw Lola, they exchanged subtle glances. It had only been rumors before, but now that an intern was seated beside Isaac, it was practically confirmation. However, since Isaac didn't introduce her, everyone pretended not to know and didn't bring it up. I sat properly next to Lisa from finance, eating, drinking, socializing when needed, and staying quiet when appropriate. No one discussed business. The focus of this dinner was Albert, aside from reviewing his contributions to the company. It was to wish him success in expanding into South City. Only after several rounds of drinks, when the pleasantries were nearly over, did Isaac put down his chopsticks and finally address the real purpose of the dinner. He was just over 50, well-maintained, looking as energetic as someone in his 40s. His sharp gaze swept across the room. Then he picked up his napkin, wiped his mouth, and said, "Besides seeing Albert off, there's actually something else I want to talk about." I set down my chopsticks and looked up at him. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Lissandro. There was still that faint smile on his lips. A talented young man, composed and refined. He looked perfectly matched with the smiling Lola beside him. I withdrew my gaze, lowered my eyes, and slowly wiped my hands with the towel beside me. Isaac's voice was deep and gentle. As you all know, I only have one daughter. When she graduated, I arranged for her to join the company, but she has a strong personality. She didn't want people here to know her identity and preferred to start from the bottom and work her way up. She's done well these past few years. I've heard many of you praise her in front of me, and I'm very pleased. Now the timing is right, with Albert heading to South City. I think it's time to formally introduce her to everyone. His gaze traveled across the room and landed quietly on me, carrying a hint of pride and a gentle smile. He extended his hand toward me and said warmly, "Diana, come here to your father. It's time everyone gets to know you." I calmly set down my napkin and smiled. In the dead silence that followed, the only sound was the glass of water tipping over beside Lissandro. I looked in that direction. His expression remained relatively composed. While smiling and apologizing, he wiped the table with tissues, his movements steady, not flustered. Then he looked up at me. His face was slightly pale, his eyes unreadable. I withdrew my gaze without even sparing him another glance. I simply stood up and, under the shocked stares of everyone present, walked toward the head of the table, placing my hand lightly on the back of Lola's chair. I said politely and softly, "Miss Lee, excuse me." I heard someone gasp sharply. Once the dinner had achieved its purpose, it ended quickly. I could already imagine the uproar this night would cause within the company. What I was more curious about, though, was Lissandro. He once told me, "Diana, people always want to move upward." I wonder now whether he's truly on his way upward. I didn't turn my head to look at him. I couldn't even be bothered to spare him a glance. It was only when the gathering ended, and he came over with a distraught Lola to say goodbye to my father, that I heard his restrained, low greeting, "President Lee, Miss Diana, we'll be leaving now." I said nothing. My father's gaze, sharp and probing, landed on Lissandro's face, then shifted to Lola beside him. After a moment, he smiled, putting on an easygoing manner. All right, all right." When everyone had left the private room, the smile on his face slowly faded. He looked at me. "What's going on between you and Lissandro?" Yes. I had mentioned Lissandro to him before, right after I graduated. I just hadn't told him that Lissandro and I were dating. But with his experience, he could probably guess. I smiled, meeting Isaac's scrutinizing gaze, and said coldly, "Didn't you see it? He was taken by Lola. Her mother is good at meddling in other people's relationships. Of course the daughter inherited that." I paused, then emphasized each word, "Dad." Chapter 8. The last time I called Isaac Dad, I was 7 years old. Back then, he had just divorced my mother. At the gates of the villa, I clutched his sleeve, asking over and over, "Dad, Dad, why did Mom divorce you? Say something." He said nothing. I didn't understand when I was little. It was only when I grew older that I began to grasp the grudges and entanglements between adults. My father and Lola's mother had been childhood sweethearts. Back then, she despised his poverty and married someone else. Later, my father married my mother, and she stayed by his side as he built everything from nothing. Step by step, he grew his business, until one day, Lola's mother reappeared in front of him, divorced, bringing Lola with her. At that time, Isaac was still young and proud. He had never gotten over being looked down on for his poverty. Yet the more he held on to that resentment, the harder it was for him to forget her. My mother never spoke much about those past affairs between the older generation. In front of me, she always preserved my father's dignity. She was a graceful and self-respecting woman. After being betrayed, she divorced cleanly and decisively. But after divorcing my mother, Isaac didn't marry Lola's mother either. He simply kept her by his side, mocking and belittling her for her past short-sightedness. Lola Lee hadn't originally been surnamed Lee. Her original surname was Tang, probably to please Isaac. She changed her surname to Lee at the age of 8. She and her mother, who had taken over what didn't belong to them, basked in their triumph. They didn't know about me, but I knew about them. I learned the truth that same year. When I was 8, I secretly returned to the villa without telling my mother and saw Isaac celebrating Lola's birthday. He held 10-year-old Lola in his arms. Lola's mother stood beside him. All three of them wore smiles on their faces, as if they were the real family. After that, I never called Isaac Dad again. I barely even saw him. Lysandro only knew that my parents were divorced and that I took my mother's surname. Later, after graduation, Isaac asked me to join his company. His exact words were, "All these years, I've only had one child, you. Doesn't your mother understand that? You're my biological daughter. The empire your mother and I built, if not for you, then who?" That woman has always wanted her daughter to join the company, but I turned her down every time. Diana, I know what I'm doing. My mother was a proud and dignified woman to her core. When she divorced Isaac, she only took what was rightfully hers and not a cent more. But I'm not like her. What belongs to me, why should I hand it over? The more something makes others uncomfortable, the more satisfied I feel. So, together with Lysandro, I joined the company after graduation, starting from the very bottom of the core business department and working our way up step by step. Isaac knew about Lysandro, paid attention to him, praised him as young and promising, said his future was limitless, all because I had once mentioned him in front of Isaac. My family situation was complicated. I had originally planned to explain everything to Lysandro when Isaac made it public. I didn't expect him to give me such a surprise first. Isaac looked at me for the first time. I saw a trace of fatigue and weariness on his face. He sighed and said, "I've wronged you." I let out a soft laugh. Just a man's nature. Suddenly, I recalled what Lola had said when she confronted me in the break room, that Isaac had told her Lysandro reminded him of his younger self. I think they really are alike, in how cold and unfaithful they can be, how easily they discard others once they've crossed the river. And yes, they both have terrible taste. I returned to the company 3 days later. In 3 days, even the most explosive news would have been fully digested by everyone in the office. When I got back, everyone kept a straight face and treated me as usual. No one crowded around to ask questions. They were just a bit warmer in their smiles than before, after all. They were seasoned professionals, perfectly measuring that delicate balance. That actually made me breathe a sigh of relief. And my own expression and attitude remained as calm as ever. Only Bella was mad at me. She complained that she had worried about me for so long, only to find out I had been playing dumb while hiding my strength. In the end, I pacified her with a seafood feast, while cracking open a lobster claw. She asked me, "You're the real rich heiress, then what is that, Lola?" I didn't hide anything from her. I briefly explained the situation, and she looked shocked. Oh my God, how can someone be so shameless? Pretending to be the boss's daughter and strutting around like that, it's disgusting. Diana, while you were away these past few days, a lot of people were secretly asking me for gossip. Can I tell them the truth? I really can't stand Lola acting so arrogant. It'd be one thing if it were real, but she's just a fake who replaced the crown prince. I don't know what she's so smug about. I peeled a piece of lobster leg meat for her and said casually with a smile, "It's not exactly a secret. If people ask, just say whatever you want." I hadn't underestimated Bella's combat power. Within just one afternoon, the entire company knew Lola's background. Chapter 9. When I went to the finance department to get project budget approval, I saw Lola standing in front of Lisa's desk. Lisa frowned, pointing at the reimbursement form. "Why are you trying to reimburse a handbag through the company account? This won't be approved. Also, you'd better double-check the rest of your claims. Don't run personal expenses through the company." As Lisa spoke, Lola's expression turned awkward. She picked up the form, and before leaving, shot me a fierce glare, as if I had put Lisa up to it. I said nothing. Ever since Isaac made my identity public, I've started getting involved in all departments of the company. It gives me a clearer view of the company's overall direction. As for Lysandro, he didn't get promoted to director. Albert is still remotely overseeing things from South City for now. After I moved up, my manager position became vacant. Bella still needed more experience and polishing, so the company recruited another business manager from a major firm to take over my previous role. After the personnel changes were finalized, people I knew in the company all sent messages or texts to congratulate me, except for 2 people, whether out of guilt or something else. Ever since I returned to the company, Lysandro and Lola had been avoiding me. There was really no need. My time and energy were limited. I had to familiarize myself with the company's complex operations step by step. I had no spare attention to waste on them. Besides, what's done is done. We were never on the same path to begin with. But clearly, they didn't see it that way. Lola came to find me first. The same empty break room, the same coffee beans, only this time, her expression had changed from arrogance and superiority to anger. Standing behind me, she spat out, "Hypocrite." I ignored her. She continued, "Back then, your mom pretended like she didn't care about anything and walked away, saying she'd cut ties forever. I thought you really didn't care about the Lee family's wealth. Turns out you're just as fake, acting all indifferent on the surface, but secretly scrambling to come back and grab what you can. If you were truly noble and above it all, you should have stayed far away. One thing on the outside, another on the inside. Disgusting." Her words actually made me laugh, and I did laugh. Honestly, I don't enjoy dealing with people who lack intelligence, especially Lola. Bella had once asked me if I had thought about how to deal with Lola. No one would believe it, but I had never even considered it, because as long as she stayed in this company, someone else would naturally make things difficult for her. Here, the one suffering would never be me, other than gaining a bit of attention from Lysandro at my expense. She had never, from beginning to end, been someone I considered a rival. She simply wasn't qualified. I looked at her, my gaze calm, almost as if I were watching a clown performing. "Lola, don't say such foolish things again. Look at how worked up you are. I'm merely taking back what belongs to me, yet you look as if I've carved something out of your flesh. If I were you, I'd go home and advise your mother, figure out a new way to win the old man over. Honestly, it's pitiful. After all these years of trying to please and flatter Isaac, all you and your mother have gotten is that meager monthly allowance, not even a house. But don't worry, now that I'll be taking over the company, that little allowance for you and your mother won't be cut off. Consider it compensation for all your hard work entertaining the old man. You've earned it." Her face shifted colors at my words, green to purple, purple back to green, until it finally turned deathly pale. Then, as if she had thought of something, a smile crept back onto her lips, as though she had found a weapon to attack me. "I can't out-argue you. But Diana, I'm not empty-handed either. The boyfriend you loved for 7 years, isn't he mine now?" I didn't even lift my eyelids. "Trash belongs in the trash can. If he's yours, then he's yours. What's there to brag about?" I think Lola chose Lysandro, maybe because she liked him, but maybe also because, in her eyes, he was the youngest manager in the company's leadership, and Isaac held him in high regard. She probably believed his future would go far beyond just being a department director. She needed to establish herself firmly in the company, and Lysandro was her best ally. In a way, Lysandro and Lola really were quite well matched. They bluffed, used each other, schemed together, only to end up with nothing and complete disappointment. The thought of it was almost laughable. After saying that, I was truly annoyed, still maintaining my composure. I looked at her with a polite and gentle expression. "This is the last time I'm being patient with you. Lola, I hope you know your place and keep a low profile at the company. Otherwise, I can assure you, I'm not always this good-tempered." My words left her on the verge of tears. Unfortunately for her, I wasn't Lysandro. I had no intention of playing the gentleman who pities delicate beauty. I stood there, smiling as I admired the tears welling up in her eyes, thinking to myself, what a pleasing sight those tears were. Chapter 10. Lysandro's resignation was exactly what I expected. I couldn't think of a single reason for him to stay. All his resignation procedures went through the normal process. I didn't interfere or ask about them. It wasn't until everything was completed, on his last day at the company, that he sent me a message, asking if we could talk. I didn't see what there was left to talk about between us. On the night Isaac revealed my identity, he had also called me, saying he was waiting downstairs at my place. But during those days, Isaac had asked me to stay at the main house for a while to go over the company's internal relationships. I didn't go back to my apartment, nor did I reply to his message. After that, he tactfully stopped bothering me. This time, perhaps because it was a final goodbye, he came to find me anyway, even though I hadn't replied. I've always admired a certain composure in him. Maybe it's a trait shared by people destined for success, the ability to act as if nothing ever happened, as if there had never been betrayal between us. He was so calm that I almost wondered if my memory had somehow betrayed me. His features were sharp and cold, his emotions unreadable. He even wore a faint smile, like an old friend, as he stood at the door and asked, "Can we talk?" I remained silent. He walked in and handed me a cup of coffee. I took it. We stood side by side in front of the large floor-to-ceiling window. Night had fallen, and the towering buildings outside glittered with lights through the glass. It felt like standing in a galaxy of stars. Then I heard Lissandro let out a quiet sigh. Do you remember when we first started working here? That was nearly 5 years ago, 2 fresh graduates, standing in a high-rise just like this, looking out over the city lights. Back then, he had entered the company full of ambition, eager to prove himself, only to be assigned the most insignificant, menial tasks. Later, he closed a deal worth over $1 million through his own ability. I still remember him clutching his stomach, aching from drinking too much, his face pale but his eyes shining with excitement as he looked at me. He said, "Diana, I'll give you a home in the city." But that deal ended up being credited to his superior. He only received a 500 yuan bonus. With that 500 yuan, he treated me to hot pot, sitting across from me, with steam rising between us. I couldn't clearly see his expression, but I remember his voice. It was the first and the last time I ever saw confusion and helplessness on his face. He asked me, "Diana, at this rate, when will we ever make something of ourselves?" After that meal, I went to see Isaac. Ever since my parents divorced, my mother had never seen him again, let alone used his money or resources. Even though he had once given me an unlimited credit card, neither my mother nor I had ever used it. That was the first time I ever asked him for help. For Lissandro, I still remember the look of surprise on Isaac's face. He was clearly pleased that I had come to him for help. But I also remember his meaningful words. "Diana, if he can't even handle something like this in society and needs my help, then he's not worthy of being my son-in-law." That's what he said. But in the end, he still took notice of Lissandro, praising him a few times in public settings. Chapter 11. A superior's preference is like a guiding light. From then on, Lissandro's career advanced naturally, and he was indeed capable and intelligent. What I hadn't expected was that somewhere along that path of compromise, we had gradually drifted apart. Like a top scholar in ancient times, he wanted to rise to the top in one leap through the favor of a princess. Perhaps, in his mind, that was what it meant to truly make something of himself. His voice came drifting out of the gap between past and present, carrying a sigh of nostalgia. How did we end up like this? I let out a faint laugh. Lissandro, don't play the sentimental card with me. I understand your earlier choice to seek a better opportunity, but now, don't make me look down on you any further. He smiled too, tilting his head slightly as he looked at me with focus. He didn't continue immediately. After a moment, the smile at the corner of his lips slowly faded, and a trace of seriousness appeared in his expression. Can't we at least be ordinary friends? Diana, I betrayed you. You hid things from me. Doesn't that make us even? Lissandro, I sighed, meeting his gaze calmly. I don't know what you mean by even. The even you're talking about is based on the fact that I'm Isaac's daughter. Have you ever truly considered, if I weren't his daughter, what kind of situation I'd be in now? I would have watched you secretly get involved with the chairman's daughter. The two of you deeply in love, while under your influence and pressure. I'd have had no choice but to resign. According to the non-compete agreement, I wouldn't even be able to work in the same industry. All the years of my effort, my experience, my hard work would have become nothing more than stepping stones beneath your relationship with Lola. And while I drifted through life, lost and battered by the cold wind, I imagine you and Lola would be enjoying the best life in the city's high-rise buildings. Lissandro, tell me now, does that make us even? How exactly do you think we could ever be even? Finally, I looked at his pale, dazed face and smiled slightly, distant and indifferent. Lissandro, there is no even. What you owe me, you'll owe for the rest of your life. And I have no intention of generously forgiving you. From now on, what's past returns to dust. What's gone returns to earth. Even if we meet again, we'll just be strangers. After saying that, I didn't waste another second. I glanced at the time and said politely, "You should go." Lissandro's departing figure was slightly unsteady. It had been a long time since I'd seen him look so disheveled. But this was the path he chose. Chapter 12. Later, I ran into Lissandro once or twice at industry summits. By then, I had already taken over Isaac's position. Wherever I went, I was surrounded by attention. while he stood on the outskirts of the crowd, starting over in a new company, climbing up step by step again. He didn't even have the standing to approach me for a conversation. After that, during meals with Isaac, I occasionally heard him mention Lola's relationships. He said she had been deceived, losing both money and dignity, without a shred of judgment. I don't know when Lissandro and Lola broke up, but for two people who came together for interest, it was hardly surprising that they would part the same way. I held my teacup, gazing at the garden in full bloom. It was already deep spring in April. Another year had quietly passed. All those past entanglements had long drifted away, like a light boat crossing countless mountains behind it.